Hey guys! Tonight we gently push off from the shoreline in the shadowy hush of dusk, just as Polynesian navigators did for centuries. The water is still warm from the sun, the sails just beginning to catch the trade winds, and the stars, yes, the stars, are waiting overhead like a patient map made entirely of soft glimmers and quiet rules. You're not holding a compass. You're not staring at a GPS. You're not even using a sextant. You're just sitting in a carved canoe, trusting your body to notice what it has always known. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? And what time is it there now? Dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You kneel in the wide, salt-streaked hull of a voyaging canoe, calloused fingers resting lightly against lashed wood. You are not alone. Beside you, other voyagers whisper in low tones, checking water gourds, smoothing woven sails, making sure bundles of taro are secure. But no one barks orders. There's no frantic rush. Departure is never a flurry. It's a breath. That breath draws in the night. Above you, the sky deepens into a dome of indigo velvet. The first stars begin to poke through, their arrangement not random at all, but a library of routes memorized long before metal ever touched maps. You're watching not just constellations, but directions. Navigation, for these sailors, starts with long gazes, not long speeches. The canoe, wa'a, vaca, or drua, depending where in Polynesia you're imagining, does not creak like an old western ship. It hums, lashed by senet cordage made from coconut husk. Its beams flex gently with the water. It isn't resisting the sea. It's dancing with it. You run a finger along the edge of the canoe, where salt has left a delicate crust. Each hull has been carved from tree trunks, so carefully selected that a kahuna, spiritual specialist, likely whispered to the tree first. The forest and the sea are not separate. One becomes the other. You push off quietly. This isn't some daring leap into the unknown. It's more like slipping into a remembered rhythm. The canoe glides into the warm Pacific, its twin hulls slicing the water like a lullaby. There are no harbors here, just departure points. People don't cling to shores. They trust the sea. A handful of woven sacks are stashed beneath benches. Each one holds something essential: breadfruit, fish wrapped in ti leaves, smooth gourds of water, woven baskets of pandanus leaves, even small live pigs. A voyaging canoe is a floating village, and unlike the chaos of colonial ship life, with its shouts, punishments, and cramped decks, this space is collaborative, quietly communal. If someone sings, it's not for morale, it's for memory. You look back at the shoreline. It's already a shadow. The reef has disappeared. The land behind you is not missed. It's known. Its name is not just a place. It's a sound, a scent, a feeling of humidity that still clings to your skin. Departure here isn't disconnection, it's continuation. And so, you fix your eyes on the horizon. Above it, Venus has just begun to rise, bright, low, and steady. Some Polynesian navigators called her the star of the evening path, not just poetic, functional. Venus rises along a path that helps steer you, that star, in that position. During that season, this is your heading. You don't write it down, you feel it. to modern minds. That might sound unnervingly fragile, relying on things like feelings and stars to cross thousands of miles of open water. But the Pacific isn't empty space. It's textured. The winds shift in consistent patterns. The waves have rhythms. The sky has layers of meaning. Even the flight of a single frigate bird can mean land is only 2 days away. You're not guessing, you're reading. Historians still argue whether this mastery came slowly, over centuries of island hopping, or in ambitious long-distance leaps, but either way, no one argues with the outcome. Polynesians reached nearly every habitable speck of the Pacific before Europe even knew how to stop scurvy. They settled Hawaii, Rapa Nui, Aotearoa, and thousands of lesser-known islands. With no metal, no wheels, and no written charts, what they had instead was more difficult to bottle generational memory, extreme environmental intimacy, and a calm, unpanicked approach to space. The stars above you now deepen in number. The Southern Cross tilts overhead, while Orion sinks low. You've memorized where each constellation rises and sets at various times of year. This isn't astrology, it's astronomical cartography, and it's humming through your body. You take a deep breath and lie back, just for a moment, against a coiled rope made of plaited coconut fiber. The canoe glides on. Someone at the front softly shifts the sail. You barely notice. Nothing creaks. No orders are shouted. The wind simply catches differently now, and your direction changes, subtly, precisely. This is what good navigation looks like, not dramatic corrections, but quiet realignments. A flying fish skips across the surface of the water. Another follows, then another. You smile. That's a sign. In some regions, navigators use the presence of certain marine life to judge temperature gradients and current behavior. Flying fish tend to indicate warm, fast-moving water, and certain species prefer proximity to land. You sit up and scan the sky again. Your guide has shifted now. Instead of Venus, you're tracking Altair, or Hoku'ula, the red star of the east. Each guide star, rising and falling, becomes a stepping stone across an invisible path. No one speaks. You don't need to. The sea darkens further, but it's never silent. It sighs. It rolls. It talks back to the canoe. You listen, not just with ears, but with hips, heels, fingertips. Subtle shifts in wave pressure tell you if you're veering. The hull is an extension of your senses. Some navigators slept on woven mats near the front, precisely because it allowed them to feel direction mid-dream. No one panics. That's maybe the secret. The Pacific is wide, yes, vast beyond comprehension. But it's not wild chaos to Polynesian voyagers. It's familiar, it's patient, and it's not asking to be conquered, just understood. And as the night deepens and you move further into this soft enormity, your thoughts slow, the wind cools, the paddle is silent, the stars blink, the canoe glides. You wake to the rhythmic slosh of water between the twin hulls, a lullaby repeated so many times through history, it might as well be carved into the sea itself. The air is warmer now, thick with the scent of salt, seaweed, and faint traces of pandanus leaves drying in the sun. Your fingers trace the edge of a woven mat, coarse but familiar. There is no deck to stretch out on, just the planks of the canoe, lashed and polished by generations of hands. Around you, the voyaging canoe reveals its quiet brilliance. You glance across to the far hull. It's a mirror of the one you're resting in, symmetrical, stable, and lashed with fiber cords that creak softly but never break. These double-hulled canoes were not inventions of accident. They were tested, refined, and honored. They didn't just cross oceans, they carried memory, myth, and livestock. There are no blueprints, no user manuals, yet every curve and lash point of this canoe carries instructions, not on paper, but in ritual. The central platform that bridges the holes is where everything happens. People cook on stone hearths cushioned with sand. Children sleep in corners shaded by woven canopies. Even ceremonial drums are packed here, cushioned under oilcloth in layers of tape-a-bark cloth. You hear a low whistle and glance up. A voyager is checking the sail, triangular, made from woven matting. Its stitching impossibly even. The mast is held not by nails, but by cordage, tensioned through knowledge passed down by repetition and muscle memory. The canoe bends slightly with each wave, but never in protest. Like a reed in wind, it yields just enough. It's tempting to compare this canoe to a ship, but really, it's more like a floating garden with ambitions. The term for these vessels varies by island group. Waka in Aotearoa, Vaka in the Cook Islands, Wa'a in Hawaii, Va'a in Samoa. But they share a spiritual ancestry, one that doesn't see water as something to be escaped from, but something to be danced with. It's a design born of humility, not domination. Historians still argue whether Polynesian seafaring technology was more advanced than European craft of the same period. But one thing is certain, these canoes could do what few others dared. They could turn around mid-ocean without capsizing. They could hold 30, sometimes more, people comfortably. They could travel over 2,000 miles with nothing but wind, sun, and memory as fuel. You reach down and tap a small storage hold, lashed shut with sennit rope. Inside are coconuts, bananas wrapped in leaves, and dried fish, a pantry that rustles instead of clanks. Along the platform's edge, carved wooden pegs hold fishing lines and hooks made from mother of pearl or tortoise shell, tied with meticulous knots that still puzzle modern replicas. A nearby voyager, barefoot, sun-bronzed, calm, starts weaving, not because there's a crisis, but because idle time is not wasted time. He coils new cordage, reinforcing the very lashing that holds this waterborne world together. Every part of the canoe is tended, not maintained out of fear, but love. You never let your home fall apart, especially when your home floats. Someone hands you a cup of water from a gourd. It's cool, not fresh, rain-caught and filtered through cloth, but sufficient. Water is precious, and yet it's shared, always. Voyaging canoes were built not just to reach somewhere new, but to carry people well. Survival was not the minimum goal. Thriving was. There was poetry, and piglets, and laughter aboard, at the stern. An elder hums softly. The tune is old, one of those chants that names wind types or current shifts. Songs weren't for pleasure alone. They encoded information. You didn't write down the 7 kinds of northwesterly wind. You sang about how each one shaped the sail. That way, your children remembered it in their bones. You sit beneath the curved shelter of palm leaf thatching lashed over bent wooden ribs. There's a carved god image tied near the mast, small, weathered, and smiling. It's not there for superstition. It's there as a companion. The divine isn't distant in this world. It rides beside you, built into the structure, sung into the sail, out of habit. Your eyes scan the horizon. Nothing but sea. Not blank sea, never that. Instead, layers of color, current, wind chop, and bird trails. Your mind tracks dozens of signs at once. Are the swell directions consistent? Is that frigate bird turning back too soon? How salty is the spray now? This is the genius of the canoe. It forces constant awareness, but not frantic alertness. You don't check instruments. You feel your body in a moving structure that amplifies every clue. You are both passenger and sensor. Modern comparisons can't quite capture it. A Polynesian voyaging canoe is not like a yacht. It's not like a kayak. It's more like sailing a conversation. Well, between the hull and the sea, the wind and the sail, the memory and the moment. You glance down at your hands. The calluses are forming again. The skin creases are darker from sun, water, and salt. This too is part of the experience. Knowledge isn't abstract. It leaves marks above you. The sky is starting to shift from its deep pre-dawn blue to something softer. The stars begin to fade, one by one. You note which vanish first. That tells you more than any clock. You stretch slowly because your body has already adjusted to the canoe's rhythm. There's no rocking to resist. You've absorbed it. The canoe becomes part of your spinal alignment, part of your inner ear. And as the sun rises low on the horizon, painting the sky with amber and pink, you see your vessel anew, not just as wood and sail, but as intention made visible. This isn't just transportation, it's worldview, it's architecture, it's language, and it floats so softly you almost forget it's moving until you look at the clouds behind you and realize how far you've already come. You sit cross-legged now, elbows resting on your knees, eyes gently closed, not in sleep, but in deep listening. Beneath you, the canoe rises and falls with a rhythm so stable it might as well be your breath. There's no land in sight, no sails on the horizon, just ocean. Yet you know exactly where you are, because, just like the navigators before you, you're reading the world not with tools, but with your skin. One of the elder voyagers shifts beside you. He doesn't say much, doesn't have to. Instead, he dips his fingers into the sea, holds them to the breeze, and makes a faint You mimic him. The water is warm, the wind is soft, your skin tingles, not from temperature, but from recognition. Celestial navigation begins with the stars, yes, but it doesn't end there. You were taught to watch the sky, but also to feel it. The pressure behind your ears when the air changes, the subtle tension in your calves as the canoe moves slightly against an opposing current. The brush of wind across your neck, sharp if it's from the northeast, softer if it curls from the southeast. These are not metaphors. These are instruments. You are one of them. Out to sea. The swell patterns begin to layer. One set comes from the east, long and slow. Another from the southwest, choppier, persistent. You feel both in your spine. Polynesian navigators knew how to sit still on the deck, eyes closed, and know exactly what direction they were headed based on the intersection of those swells. It's called ATAC in some traditions, a system that turns the islands themselves into moving reference points. You keep track of your position, not by fixing the canoe to a coordinate, but by imagining how islands shift relative to you. Your mind becomes a compass, but the compass is a song, not a needle. Historians still argue whether this wave based navigation can truly match modern instruments its imprecision, but one research voyage in 1976 proved its power. A canoe called Hokulea sailed from Hawaii to Tahiti using no modern tools, only traditional navigation, and it arrived within sight of land, on time, unlost, unpanicked. You shift slightly on the mat. Your hip bone touches the outer frame of the canoe. That spot, right there, presses differently depending on the angle of the current. If you feel sharp impact, you're off course. If it hums evenly, you're aligned. You've only been at sea for a short while, but already you understand how this feedback loop works. The canoe teaches you as long as you're willing to listen. A bird wheels overhead, slim, black, a long forked tail, a frigate bird. You follow its arc. It's flying high, but circling slowly. Frigate birds can stay aloft for days, sometimes weeks, but they don't land on water. They only rest on land. That means there's land nearby, maybe 100 kilometers, maybe less. You make a mental note. You won't veer yet, but now you know which direction holds promise. Nearby. Another voyager crouches low over the water, dipping his hand in again and again. He's not just testing temperature, he's watching for patterns in the bubbles. Some waves carry foam, some don't. The presence of floating seaweed, the occasional jellyfish, a drift of pumice, they all say something. You once read that early navigators treated the ocean like a text, but that's not quite right. The ocean isn't something to read, it's something to join. It's a conversation already in progress. You just have to learn the language. A gust brushes your cheek. It smells faintly of charcoal and sweet roots, burnt coconut husk. Maybe you turn toward it. The smell of fire, faint and high, can carry from land. You sniff again. Gone. Maybe it was your imagination, or maybe not. Either way, it's noted. Your fingers run along the edge of the canoe. The hole, carved from breadfruit or koa wood, carries not only your bottle but your trust. The lashing is firm. The sail hums slightly. You are not drifting. You are steering with no rudder, no tiller, only adjustments in sail tension and weight distribution. This is not magic. It's attention. You glance up at the sky again. The sun is higher now, veiled by light clouds. Time shifts here. You don't count hours, you count shadows. Where they fall, how long they stretch. The position of your own body becomes a kind of sundial. The sails cast shadows too. One elder teaches younger voyagers to gauge direction just by watching where the mast's shadow lands on the deck. And all of it is calm. No rush, no urgency. Just a continual state of adjustment, like keeping your balance on a yoga ball for 6 days straight, but wetter. And with more salted fish, another wave set rises underneath you, a third direction now, almost imperceptible. You know that one. It's a sign of a nearby reef. You can't see it yet, but your stomach tells you it's there. The canoe bobs differently. The water stiffens. The motion changes from rolling to twitching. A reef might still be 20 miles away, but your body knows it first. You lie back again, this time resting your head against a rolled sail. The horizon is wide. The sky is bigger than any screen you've ever known, but somehow it doesn't overwhelm you. It focuses you, because here Space is information. Openness is clarity. Emptiness is never empty. And so, with no map, no compass, no voice shouting orders, you sail forward. You are not lost. The sky arches above you, endless and mild. The sea stretches below, steady and talkative, and your body, somewhere in between, understands both better than it ever understood traffic signals or email notifications. You smile, no beeping, no buzzing, just a whisper of wave and wind, and your own heartbeat echoing the canoe's rhythm. You sit now near the center of the canoe, hands resting in your lap, listening to a navigator recite stars in low tones, not for performance, not for storytelling, but because this is how memory travels. He chants as if reading from the night sky. Though it's still broad daylight, his eyes are half closed, head tilted, and he sings not to entertain, but to remember where you're going. Each name is a waypoint, each line, a leg of a journey. This is the star path. He begins with the rising of Sirius, then Aldebaran, then Canopus. With each name, he nods gently in a direction, pointing with his whole face, not his fingers. You follow, though you don't know them all yet. The stars don't move randomly. They rise and set at specific times in specific places. If you know them well enough, you can sail anywhere, no sextant required, just a brain that acts like a sky. These chants aren't short. Some navigators memorize hundreds of star names in order of appearance across the sky at different latitudes and seasons. It's not memorization for memorization's sake. It's practical. If you know where the stars rise, you know your latitude. If you know how high they climb, you know your direction. It's a floating planetarium, and it lives in your mouth. You glance down now at a smooth object resting in a woven basket beside the navigator. It looks like a game, but it's not. It's a stick chart made of thin, curved pieces of wood or coconut midribs bound together with senet fiber. The chart doesn't show islands the way Western maps do. It shows swells, long, arched sticks mark the direction of major ocean currents. Shorter sticks cross them, mapping local wave disturbances. Tiny shells are tied in to represent islands, but it's not designed for eyes. It's designed for memory. You pick it up and feel the chart in your hands. Light, fragile, but dense with meaning. It's not for daily use. Stick charts were made as learning tools. Before a voyage, navigators would study them, then leave them behind. You didn't bring the map, you became it. Historians still debate whether the charts were symbolic or literal. Some argue they weren't meant to represent actual distances. Others claim they encoded very real knowledge in abstract form. Either way, you're holding a tool for remembering movement, not space. It's not about where things are, it's about how things flow. A young voyager sits beside you now, eyes scanning the horizon, murmuring names of winds in a quiet recitation. Like the stars, the winds have identities. There's the land wind, soft and dry. The ocean wind, thick and moist. The birth wind, tied to new islands. The departing wind, which carries you from home. You're not sure which one you feel now, but he seems to know. And he smiles as if recognizing an old friend. You shift your body slightly. The canoe responds. It tilts, not much, but enough that your weight sends ripples down the hull. That change matters. On a voyage, everyone's movement has consequences. The canoe teaches awareness not through rules, but feedback at night. You'll use those stars again, but during the day. The sun takes over. Its position changes slowly, predictably. Its heat, its glare on the water, even the size and direction of shadows, all offer clues. A stone tucked into the canoe's lashings can cast a shadow that serves as a compass if you know what you're looking for. You lean over the side now, trailing your hand in the sea. You're searching not for temperature, but for texture. The water feels streaked. That means two currents are colliding here, warm and cold. You make a note. Some fish prefer these meeting places. So do seabirds, and so do voyagers who know the ocean isn't uniform. The navigator beside you points. There's no words, just a nod. On the horizon, a faint triangle, barely visible. A cloud shaped wrong, low, broad at the base, flat on top, a land cloud. You blink. It doesn't move like the others, and under it, just for a moment, you think you see darkness, a vertical smudge. Could be an atoll, could be nothing, but he knows. You'll aim for it gently, not directly. The approach is never rushed. Polynesian voyaging didn't rely on precision in the Western sense. You didn't hit the island dead center. You arrived in its vicinity, then used clues to zero in. Birds, cloud shapes, color changes in the sea, even the smell. That's the trick. You didn't aim for a dot. You aimed for a region. You glance back at the stick chart. It now seems less like a map and more like a score for an orchestra of waves, and you're the instrument that plays it. Fingers reading, muscles responding, mind remembering. One more chant begins. This time, it's a story about a canoe that followed a star too early and ended up circling an island for 3 days before realizing the guide star was seasonal, not eternal. The lesson timing matters, and knowing the when is as important as knowing the where. You smile. These stories aren't just legends, they're footnotes. Another bird passes overhead, a white tern this time. They don't stray far from land. A few minutes later, another follows, then 3 more. The line becomes clear. You follow them, not because you're desperate, but because they're part of the system. The sky's gentle breadcrumbs, and somewhere behind you, the stick chart rests again in its basket, not needed now. The ocean is speaking, and you're listening, quietly, precisely, calmly. You blink slowly as the sun settles just past its zenith, casting long streaks of light across the water's surface. The heat isn't harsh, just steady, like the brush of a warm hand across your shoulders. You sit in silence, the kind that's comfortable, shared. Beside you, the navigator shifts slightly, eyes fixed on a point in the sky. He doesn't speak. He doesn't have to. Something is about to happen. You follow his gaze and spot it, a dark speck fluttering near the horizon. Then another. Birds, not the kind that glide in lazy circles high above, but low-flying seabirds, darting with purpose. You count them. 4, well, maybe 6. They move in a line, heading away from the canoe. But that direction, that line, matters. These birds are terns, and they never stray too far from land. Their daily foraging patterns take them out to sea at dawn and back at dusk. If you follow them home in the late afternoon, they'll take you to land, not metaphorically, literally. The movement of birds is one of the quietest secrets of Pacific navigation. There are no birdwatching manuals on board, no charts showing migration paths, just experience. observed patterns passed down with exacting care. You don't learn this by reading, you learn it by watching, over years, over oceans. Your eyes stay on the terns as they fly in elegant arcs. Their wings barely touch the air. You try to judge their angle. Are they flying home already, or are they still searching? Their direction suggests land lies just slightly to your northeast. You whisper this inwardly, not because you doubt it, but because saying it aloud feels unnecessary. Behind you, someone leans over the edge of the canoe, peering into the water. He scoops something, a clump of seaweed, brown and trailing. A few small crustaceans cling to its edges. That type only grows near shorelines. Another quiet clue. Historians still argue whether early Polynesians always knew there was land out there, or if they voyaged into true uncertainty. But when you add up the signs, the birds, the seaweed, the water's color, the clouds, it doesn't feel uncertain at all. It feels like a language, just softer spoken than you're used to. You shift your gaze downward now, to the sea itself. The color here has changed, almost imperceptibly, but you notice it? A little greener, a little less deep blue. That tells you the water is shallower than it was hours ago. Not shallow like coral reefs yet, but shallower than the open sea. Light reflects differently, and in that reflection, you read depth. It's not just color either, it's the motion. The swell beneath the canoe is still rhythmic, but it's layered now, a choppier ripple underneath the main pulse of the waves. That's what's called reflected swell, waves bouncing back from nearby landforms. You're still hours away, but the land is already speaking in waves. The sun arcs lower, and a faint breeze stirs across your skin. It smells faintly different now, not stronger, but richer. There's a kind of planty sweetness in it, a whisper of leaves, of dirt, of something unmoving beneath the sky. You close your eyes. That's not open ocean wind. That's land-breathed wind. No one on board celebrates. No one claps. This isn't the final leg. It's just another signal, another nod in the long conversation between sea and canoe. You glance at the sail. It's been trimmed slightly to adjust for the breeze. Not a major change, just a ripple at the bottom edge, curled inward, enough to shift course a few degrees. These corrections don't happen loudly. There's no shouted order, no dramatic wheel turning. Someone saw the birds, someone saw the seaweed, someone smelled the change, and someone moved the sail. That's it. That's how steering happens out here. You run your fingers along the planks of the platform. They're cool now, sun-faded and lightly damp from sea spray. The canoe creaks faintly with each shift in weight, but never complains. It's built to move, built to listen, just like you, up ahead. The navigator nods once more. He lifts a finger, pointing not high, not dramatically, just a quiet gesture toward the northeast. There, on the horizon, you squint, and then you see it. It's not land, not yet. It's a cloud, but it's the wrong kind of cloud. It rises vertically, almost like smoke, then flattens. It doesn't drift. It anchors. It's sitting above something solid. Polynesian navigators call it a land cloud. Its base is darker than the rest. That's because it reflects off the island's vegetation, not just the water. You let out a slow breath. There's something profoundly steadying about this kind of navigation. It doesn't rely on breakthroughs or instruments or last-minute discoveries. It relies on paying attention. You're not chasing a destination. You're approaching it as one might approach a thought, gradually, carefully, with space for uncertainty and confidence to coexist. You glance up again at the birds. Some have turned now, flying back in the direction you're headed. A tern flutters lower, nearly skimming the water. Its wings don't make a sound, but its path, its intention, speaks volumes. The clouds shift once more, and now you can see it. A faint green blur at the edge of the sea. Not quite a silhouette, not yet fully real. But it's there, land, still distant, but near enough to name, not out loud, not yet. But you feel it in your chest, in the quiet confirmation of every clue you've read so far. And just like that, you know you're not guessing, you're arriving. The light softens as the sun continues its slow descent, and a breeze nudges against the sail like a sigh. The canoe shifts course slightly, not because of a command, but because someone moved their basket, or leaned a little differently, or maybe just adjusted the trim of the sail by a few centimeters. You're not sure who did it. That's the point. Everyone on board is part of the steering system. Now that land is somewhere ahead, your mind turns inward, not with anticipation, but with curiosity. What happens between setting out and arriving? What does life look like on a voyaging canoe for days, sometimes weeks? Across the vast Pacific, you stretch your legs slowly and glance toward the central platform, where a woman is tending to a woven basket that smells faintly of roasted root vegetables. Breadfruit, you guess? Perhaps wrapped in leaves and tucked beneath hot stones in a hearth set into a shallow sand pit on deck. Not a roaring fire, just heat, enough to warm, cook, dry. There's a rhythm to daily life on these canoes, but it's not divided by clocks. It's divided by needs. When someone's hungry, when the sail needs mending, when the swell shifts, when the water gourd is light. There are no bells, no whistles, just small moments of doing. You walk toward the water storage area, gourds hollowed and sealed, tied carefully in bunches, each one cushioned with palm fibers to prevent friction. Fresh water is everything out here, collected from rain when possible, tightly rationed but always shared nearby. Someone is tending a small pen made of woven bamboo strips. Inside it, a piglet, pink, grumpy, and chewing the corner of a dried leaf. The piglet isn't a mascot. It's part of the cargo, food for arrival, possibly, or a gift to another island, or a future breeder. Animals were never just meat. They were diplomacy, economy, kinship, inheritance. You glance around and realize how much else is on board. Bundles of taro, tied tightly in layers of woven fiber. Breadfruit saplings, their roots packed in damp soil. Gourds of oil, baskets of feathers, carved bowls, tapa cloths. You're not just sailing people, you're sailing a future. Historians sometimes underestimate this, as seeing Polynesian voyages as daring explorations, like Viking raids or colonial expeditions. But this wasn't conquest, this was settlement. You didn't sail with swords, you sailed with plants, pigs, stories, and shade. You didn't just find islands, you filled them with culture, with cuisine, with companionship. One voyager carefully opens a woven satchel and pulls out a string of polished shell beads. Not jewelry. Well, maybe, but also memory. Each bead may represent a family line, a promise, or a message for someone waiting on the next shore. This is a world where objects are not silent. They carry meaning. You sit now beneath the shade of a simple canopy stretched across two poles. The air is sweet with the scent of dried pandanus leaves. Someone is singing quietly, a chant, slow and rhythmic. It's about a turtle, or maybe a canoe shaped like a turtle. The metaphors here swim easily between forms. It's not important whether the song is literal, it's important that it's being sung. Later, you help mend a torn edge in the matting of the sail. It's not a dramatic repair, just two strands retwisted, retied. The sail itself is woven from pandanus, light, strong, flexible. It lets air through in places, fluttering slightly instead of snapping like canvas. The wind prefers this sail. It doesn't have to fight it. Nearby, two children are threading something, fibers into a cord. One of them has a piece of shark tooth, flattened and tied to a stick, a scraper. She's shaping a sliver of wood. The other is braiding. Not because anyone told them to, but because this is what you do with time out here. You glance again toward the baskets. Some are filled with candle nuts, others with dried bananas, wrapped in leaves and then tied into bundles so tight they could last weeks. A few baskets carry things less edible, tiny carvings, small tools, a bundle of feathers sealed with wax. This canoe isn't crowded, but it is full of utility, full of intention. You step carefully around a row of sleeping mats. They're woven, patterned, and arranged with care. No one has a cabin. There are no private rooms, but there is privacy found in respect, not partitions. If someone lies down and covers their face, you don't step over them. You shift the canoe's rhythm around them. There's a kind of softness to everything here, not weakness. Softness like sand is soft, or like the shade of a breadfruit tree at noon. The canoe carries that softness. It doesn't conquer the sea. It glides, it absorbs, and it teaches you to do the same. You're not in a hurry. Arrival isn't something to rush. It's something to approach the way you approach a new friend's laughter, carefully, curiously, ready to listen. The sun dips lower, the light turns golden. The canoe creaks, just a little, as someone shifts a water gourd into the shade. You hear a piglet sneeze. A bird cries overhead. And somewhere beneath you, the sea keeps moving. But the canoe, your floating home, keeps its pace, gentle, certain, sustained. The horizon softens into that strange watercolor blur that only comes when sun and sea share a secret. You're sitting toward the front now, eyes half-lidded, not out of fatigue, but from the quiet joy of recognition. There's land up ahead. You can't quite make out the details yet. No trees, no huts, no waves breaking on a reef, but the signs have become a chorus. The birds have doubled, not just terns now, but noddies and boobies. They weave tight spirals in the air, fishing or commuting. Some drop toward the water, skim the surface, rise again, and wheel back toward that same odd smudge on the horizon. You look down. The color of the water has shifted again. What was deep sapphire is now tinged with green. You lean over the side and see the hints of coral heads below, still deep, but visible now through the shifting mirror of the sea. That means reef soon. That means lagoon. That means shelter. Someone near the stern lifts a long, tapered paddle, more ceremonial now than functional, and dips it once into the water. Not to steer, just to feel. The way you might touch a wall in a familiar hallway, even with your eyes closed. This is how landfall happens in Polynesian voyaging. Not with a triumphant shout, not with drums and bugles, but with a soft intake of breath. You aren't discovering anything. You're arriving, and the difference matters. The island that awaits has a name already, maybe many names, some formal, sung in chants, others whispered, remembered from ancestors who landed there generations ago and passed along the description in quiet phrases. The island with the tall coconut spine, or the place where the sand sounds hollow when you walk. You reach for a bundle of dried leaves, tuck it behind the woven mast frame. Offerings. Every arrival deserves one, even if the island is uninhabited, even if it's only a temporary stop. You don't come empty handed. That would be like walking into someone's home without knocking. You notice the sail has changed shape again, not dramatically, just drawn in a bit tighter. You're adjusting course to swing wide of the reef, approaching from the leeward side where the water is calmer, the coral less jagged. The reef isn't a barrier, it's a welcome mat if you know how to read it. Historians still debate how early navigators communicated these details across generations. There were no charts, no journals, and yet, details like reef gaps, freshwater streams, or dangerous currents were preserved through chants, myths, and simple, repeated travel. You don't have to write it down if you embody it. The canoe slows slightly, not because the wind has dropped, but because someone has lowered the steering oar, dragging its long blade gently through the water. A slight turn begins, almost imperceptible, but you feel it in your chest. You rise to your feet, slowly, carefully, eyes still on the horizon. It's clearer now. You see trees, the arc of a beach, a dark line that might be cliffs, and beneath it all, that scent again, soil, ferns, cooked roots. The island is breathing. Someone begins a chant, not loud, just audible over the soft hiss of sea against hull. It's a chant of thanks, not for a safe voyage, necessarily, but for guidance, for patience, for everything the canoe knew before you did. The piglet squeals once, sensing the change. Even it knows. You begin preparing. The sail will come down soon, carefully folded and stowed. The holes will be checked for cracks, the gourds counted, water remaining measured, the bundles of plants and gifts retied. It's a practiced ritual, not frantic, not bustling, just calm, practiced motion. You notice one voyager has begun to paint something on a piece of bark cloth. Simple strokes with dye pressed from berries. It looks like a wave pattern. Maybe it's a memory. Maybe it's for someone waiting ashore. In this world, the line between communication and art is soft. As the canoe nears the island, you see the reef clearly now, white foam marking the break, fish leaping in the shallows, birds walking in tight groups along the black rocks. You aim for the pass, a narrow cut in the coral where the water runs deep and blue. You remember now something the navigator told you, your first day at sea. You don't aim to hit the island, you aim to reach the land's breath. You didn't understand it then, but you do now. You've been sailing not toward a spot, but toward a system of signs, a language of presence. The canoe slides through the reef pass with hardly a sound. The water here is calm, impossibly clear. You can see the sand bottom, scattered coral heads, a flash of blue parrotfish. The hulls make no noise, except the sigh of displacement. Inside the lagoon, the wind dies down. You've entered a bowl of stillness. The chant ends. You've arrived. No applause, no declaration, just that deep exhale shared by every voyager before you. You step onto the platform again and look toward the trees, tall, green, gently swaying. Someone will scout for fresh water. Someone will prepare a meal. Someone will walk the beach just to feel land underfoot. And you'll sit for a moment longer, not because you're tired, but because you understand that what just happened wasn't a journey to land. It was a return to rhythm. You sit on the sand now, the canoe resting quietly in the lagoon behind you, holes nudged into place by soft, lapping waves. There's no ceremony, no crowd, just this hush, sun-dappled trees above, a shoreline curved like a crescent moon, and the gentle rustle of pandanus leaves in the breeze. But even in stillness, the voyage continues, because for Polynesian navigators, the journey never ends when your feet touch land. Around you, the crew begins to unload, not with haste, not with shouting, just methodically. Baskets are lifted and carried up the beach. Saplings, still wrapped in damp cloth, are checked for moisture. Tools are unpacked. But one man remains on the canoe. He's still singing, not for show, not for attention, but because he's remembering the next journey. You wander toward him, stepping carefully over mats and cordage, and sit again near the center beam. He sings the name of a star, then a second, then a third, and as the chant continues, you realize this isn't just a chant, it's a map. In many Polynesian traditions, locations weren't fixed with latitude and longitude. Instead, they were remembered through naming paths. Routes between islands were encoded in song, and each leg of a journey had its own rhythm, its own set of star markers, and even its own personality. Some paths were generous and easy. Others were tricky and temperamental. You didn't just memorize them, you felt them. This practice is often called wayfinding, but that word can feel too technical, too clinical. What you're doing, what this navigator is doing, is less about finding and more about relating. The stars, the sea, the swells, these are not tools, they're kin. You don't follow them, you travel with them. The chant changes now. He begins to name waves, that's right. The waves themselves had names. In some traditions, long-distance swells were called Moana Roa, long ocean. Localized ripples near shore had different names. It's a sharp, chaotic cross-current might be called the angry child, while a slow, steady surge might be named for a sleeping god. These weren't metaphors, they were mnemonics. You remember learning one name in particular, Te La, the sun path. It referred to the midday line of the sun during a specific season. Sailors used it to maintain their east-west orientation when cloud cover made star tracking difficult. You look up now. The sun is behind a light veil of mist. If you didn't know better, you'd think there was no guide left. But that's the thing. The sun doesn't vanish. It just speaks more softly. Historians still argue whether Polynesians created a formal compass rose or used abstract quadrant divisions like the Greeks did. But what's clear is that they had directionality embedded in everyday language. You didn't say, over there. You said, toward the sunrise or in the wind's path. Even common greetings could imply bearing. As you sit, the navigator picks up a thin, polished piece of driftwood with a fingertip. He draws in the sand, first, a dot, then a crescent, then a series of arcs radiating outward. He marks it with shells and bits of coral, a visual memory. He's rebuilding a path song in the sand. You join him, pressing your finger into the damp edge and drawing your own line. He nods. You're learning. Behind you, others gather leaves, dig a pit for cooking, set up a temporary shelter with woven mats. This island may only be a stop, but every stop matters, not just for rest, but for orientation. Being on land doesn't mean you're done. It means you recalibrate. You listen for the wind through trees instead of across water. You watch how birds nest, where clouds gather at dusk, how quickly tide pools fill. On some islands, navigators placed markers, stones or carved posts, aligned with the rising of a key star. They'd return each season to confirm the alignment, not because they doubted the stars, but because they valued relationship. Recalibrating was never a sign of error, it was a sign of care. You rise and walk inland just a bit. The trees here are tall, spaced wide. There's a clearing that seems to remember other feet. Maybe this place has welcomed canoes before. Maybe others chanted here, or drew wave maps in the sand. You kneel and press your palm to the earth, still warm, still listening. You return to the beach as the sun leans lower, turning gold. The navigator has stopped singing now, but he hasn't stopped remembering. His eyes follow a path across the water that only he can see. And maybe you too. Now, a little, you sit beside him again, and for a while, neither of you speaks, because here, silence isn't absence, it's direction. The night has returned, a soft one, no storms, no harsh winds, just a breeze slipping over the treetops and brushing the surface of the lagoon like a careful hand. You lie on your back again, this time on the shore, wrapped in woven cloth, eyes turned skyward, and above you, the constellations bloom. You know them now, at least the ones that matter here. Orion reclines low in the north. The Southern Cross tilts downward, pointing toward invisible south. Altair has risen. Vega lingers higher. But the one that draws your attention most tonight is a small diamond of stars, faint, tight, steady. You've heard its name whispered more than once. Tataki o Te Ra, the Southern Cross. To Western astronomy, it's just a bright shape in the southern sky. To Polynesian navigators, it was far more, a kind of clock, a compass, a calendar. The angle at which it rose and fell told you where you were in the world. Its orientation changed with latitude. Its tilt could track seasons. Its proximity to the horizon was a whisper of position. You turn your head slightly. The lagoon lies still, the canoe resting like a cat curled in sleep. You trace the constellation again with your eyes. The cross isn't perfectly aligned. It's at an angle, steep tonight. That tells you something, though not in numbers. It tells you where the ocean is breathing next, where the trade winds will come from tomorrow, where your path bends, subtly, beside you. Someone clears their throat, an older voice, worn like sea-polished driftwood. He begins another chant, low, melodic, more rhythm than melody. It's a story about a woman who chased a star across the sea, only to find it nested in the branch of a breadfruit tree. The lesson is unclear, or maybe it's deliberately foggy. In Polynesian navigation, not every story teaches with a flashing neon sign. Some just sit in your mind, slowly revealing meaning, like a tide uncovering a shell. This is how knowledge embeds, not as facts, but as companions. You remember something now. On your first day at sea, someone pointed to a stretch of open sky and said, "That's the place where the ocean forgets to hide." You thought they were being poetic, but now you think they meant it literally. There are places in the Pacific where light, wind, cloud, and current come together in ways so clear they feel intimate. You just have to know when to look. The chant continues. He names the stars again, but this time in relation to each other. Not absolute, but comparative. When Hokule meets the shoulder of the shark, then the path to Atea opens. You're not sure what it means, but it settles in your bones anyway. Historians still debate whether Polynesian star lore was standardized across the vast ocean network, or if each island group had its own mnemonic structures. The truth is probably both. Some stars were universal, others were local, but all of them mattered. You didn't need a constellation to be global. You just needed it to get you to your cousin's island. And when that star wasn't visible, you learned to read what it had taught you by its absence. You shift, resting your head against a folded mat. The sound of insects buzzes gently in the brush. The waves against the reef speak in their usual hush-hush rhythm. And you realize something about this entire experience. It doesn't rely on amplification. There are no moments designed to impress, just patterns, repetition, reassurance. The man stops chanting. Silence returns, but in it, you hear a different voice, a younger voyager, somewhere closer to the canoe, softly reciting wave patterns. The syllables are clipped, careful, practiced. It's a lesson. Someone is still learning, and someone else is still teaching. That's how the stars survive, not by burning brighter, but by being noticed. The Southern Cross dips slightly lower, not much, just a finger width. But that change, if repeated over hours, becomes direction. Over nights, becomes path. Over generations, becomes legacy. Some cultures name ships, some name stars, but Polynesian navigators named relationships. The angle between two stars might have a name. The rhythm of two swells might have a name. A moment at sea, where the wind pauses and the sun hangs low, might be called Te Tohu, the sign, because it always means something. You close your eyes now, not to sleep, but to feel. The wind has cooled. The sky remains clear. The canoe, though resting, has its sail furled carefully, ready, as if it knows that even after landfall, a true navigator is never quite still. And up above, the stars do not twinkle here like they do in colder skies. They gleam, steady, patient, whispering directions not to the ears, but to the bones. You wake before dawn, not from noise or light, but from a kind of internal nudge, like the sea itself gently tapping your shoulder. The sky is still ink dark, with just a thumbprint of silver near the horizon where the moon has dipped. Around you, others stir slowly, quietly, and as no one shouts. The day begins not with commands, but with shared breath. You sit up, stretch, and glance toward the canoe. A voyager is already checking the lashings, fingering the rigging in the dim light. Another tends to a small fire, coaxing it back to life with practiced patience. The soft crackle mixes with the rustle of palm leaves and the occasional whisper of feet brushing sand. There's a calm here that isn't passive. It's built. maintained. You begin to understand something deeper for Polynesian navigators. Exploration wasn't an act of domination, it was one of stewardship. You walk toward the waterline, bare feet sinking into cool sand. The lagoon is a perfect mirror, broken only by the gentle breath of the tide. Behind you, the island looms, modest, lush, still unfamiliar in its inner heart. But no one's rushing inland with flags or fences. There's no claiming here. That idea, ownership, never held the same meaning in Polynesian thought. Islands weren't empty prizes waiting for the first sailor bold enough to step ashore. They were ancestors, siblings. The land had mana, spiritual power, and your job was to honor it, not name it after yourself, somewhere behind you. A navigator begins reciting again, but this time, he's naming not stars or swells, but people, island names, clan names, relationships that extend beyond horizon lines for Polynesian voyagers. Knowledge was often shared, deliberately, generously. A good navigator didn't guard secrets, he passed them on. That openness is woven into the culture. When an island hosted visitors, it wasn't a temporary truce. It was an expectation of care. You fed them, you taught them, you invited them to dance, and when they left with stories, ways to find the next island, ways to remember this one. Even the canoe reflects this ethic. The double-hulled design isn't just for stability. It creates space, literal and metaphorical, for more people. It carries more food, more tools, more voices. You didn't set out alone to prove yourself. You set out as part of a lineage, a web of voices stretching back through generations. Historians sometimes try to pin down exactly how far Polynesians traveled, how many islands they reached. But those numbers miss the point. What matters is how they traveled, with precision, yes, but also with trust. Trust in their canoe, in their crew, in their gods, and in the sea. You crouch now near the canoe, running your hand along the hull. The sennit lashings are tight but slightly frayed in places. A younger voyager is retying a knot, murmuring the names of ancestors as he works. Not as prayer, necessarily, more like acknowledgement. A navigator never works alone, even when he's the only one awake. You glance up and see the first hints of light in the east. Pink, pale blue, gold edging the clouds. The birds have begun their stirrings too. You see terns diving, noddies preening, a heron lifting its long legs through the shallows like it's reluctant to wake. A woman appears with a bowl, something starchy and sweet-smelling, wrapped in leaves. You eat slowly, grateful. The meal isn't large, but it's satisfying, and you know instinctively that no one will go hungry as long as food remains. Rationing here doesn't mean withholding, it means fairness. The conversation drifts toward the next leg of the journey, not a plan. Exactly, more wondering. Will the wind shift by midday? Should you aim for the larger island 2 days' sail northeast, or wait here until the swell flattens? No one insists, no one demands. Decisions unfold like tides. A voyager points toward a particular tree in the grove. She has good shade, he says. Another agrees. That will be your resting place for midday. You smile. Even the trees are discussed with the same care you once reserved for contracts and forecasts. The breeze picks up, carrying the scent of wet bark and sun-warmed leaves. You close your eyes and listen. There's a word in many Polynesian languages, aloha. Aroha, alofa. It's often translated as love, but it's more than that. It's presence, compassion, connected breath. That's the feeling here, not in ceremony, not in monuments, but in the way people carry water, mend rope, tell stories. You walk inland a few steps and stop at a small clearing. There, someone has drawn another map in the dirt, not with precision, but with care. Shells mark stars. A curved stick shows a wave path. A circle indicates a reef. You recognize it now. You're learning to see. The sun breaks the horizon, and as golden light spills across the sand, the canoe glows. Lashed wood, woven sail, water dark hull. It rests there not as a vehicle, but as a teacher. A reminder that the sea is not a gap between islands. It's the thread that holds them together. You wander slowly along the inland path, feeling roots underfoot and the soft give of leaf-littered earth with each step. You pass a cluster of banana trees, their broad green leaves rustling like paper in the breeze. Just ahead, a shaded grove, thick with hibiscus and breadfruit trees, offers a space to pause. You sit on a stone, smooth and warm, and listen. A younger voyager is telling a story, one you haven't heard yet. It starts not with once upon a time, but with a name, the name of a sea spirit who rode on the back of a whale and scattered islands like seeds across the water. The others around him listen with a kind of reverence, not for the spirit's power, but for the way the story holds together. The details are strange and specific: waves that laugh, birds that whisper warnings, canoes that grow legs and walk. And somehow, you believe it. Not because it's literal, but because it fits. Because it was told to make something clear: the ocean isn't empty. And travel is never just a technical act. In Polynesian culture, mythology is not separate from navigation. Myths steer the mind as surely as stars steer the whole. The stories are mnemonic systems, ways of encoding real-world data through image and rhythm. A tale about a trickster demigod getting lost near a whale-shaped cloud bank might actually be a star map disguised as a bedtime tale. You smile. It's a different kind of knowing, one that resists the split between science and spirit. The elders here understood that humans learn best through meaning. A swell doesn't just crest, it sighs. A current doesn't just flow, it remembers. And so, Polynesian myths, often filled with gods, birds, and transfigured fish, whisper warnings, directions, and ethics, all in one breath. Historians still debate how much practical knowledge is embedded in these tales. Were they metaphors later mistaken for maps, or were they maps from the beginning? Just ones drawn in the heart, instead of on parchment. Evidence suggests both. There's the story of Kupe, the legendary navigator who sailed from Hawaii to Aotearoa, guided by a great octopus and a sky filled with fire. To Western ears, that's a fantastical origin myth. But if you follow the tentacle references, they line up eerily well with branching current systems and fire in the sky, possibly a reference to auroras or volcanic light. Either way, it guided someone, and they arrived. You shift your weight, brushing a dried hibiscus petal from your shoulder. The storyteller has moved on now, his voice lower, more serious. This tale is about a canoe that ignored a sign. A bird refused to land. A current swirled strangely. A piece of driftwood floated backward. The crew pressed on anyway, and the sea grew silent. That's never a good sign. The canoe vanished. The lesson isn't fear, it's humility. A good navigator doesn't just learn, they listen, even when the lesson isn't what they wanted, especially then, nearby. A carved figure leans against a tree, weathered wood shaped into a humanoid form with wide eyes and spiral carved shoulders. A guardian, not of territory, but of memory. Figures like this, tiki in some regions, stand as reminders of lineage, not idols in the Western sense, but mnemonic devices in wood and time. You approach and run your hand over the surface, smooth in some places, rough in others. You wonder how many stories it holds, how many generations have stood here, just as you do now, asking not what happened, but what matters. You sit again on the earth, and this time a child comes to join you, barefoot, serious, holding a coconut shell filled with water. He offers it without a word. You drink. It's cool and faintly sweet. You nod in thanks, and he sits beside you, saying nothing more. That's another thing you've noticed. In this world, information isn't blasted, it's layered, like waves, like clouds. You receive only what you're ready for. Later, someone brings out a woven mat and unrolls it in the clearing. A simple one, nothing ceremonial, just wide enough for two people to sit comfortably. They begin etching in the dirt with a stick, lines, circles, wave patterns, a diagram, maybe a reflection, a record of a dream, or maybe all three. A breeze lifts the trees overhead. You glance up, and through the canopy, you see the first stars flickering in the dusk, and just like that, the myths and the sky overlap again. One voyager leans close and murmurs, "That's the path of the canoe of Maui." You follow his gaze. 3 stars in a curve, faint, easy to overlook. He points again, this time at a brighter star nearby. That's his hook. You smile. You've heard the story. Maui fished up the islands with that hook, a tale so famous it echoes across the Pacific in dozens of versions. But now, you see it for what it also was, an instruction, a method, a reminder that the stars do not just shine, they pull. The fire is quiet now, just a circle of glowing coals and the occasional crackle of wood settling. You sit nearby with a few others, everyone cross-legged or reclining, the way people do when they've worked enough for the day but aren't quite ready to sleep. The mood is soft, content, someone's humming, not a chant this time, but a kind of tune without words, a melody that matches the pace of the waves beyond the trees. You glance toward the canoe again, still resting in the shallows, its twin hulls dark under the moonlight. It has carried you far, taught you much, but what you didn't expect was this: not every voyage ends in arrival. Some end in return. Someone beside you leans forward and says, "This island's not the place." Not bitterly, just plainly. Others nod. They've scouted the terrain. The fresh water is scarce. The soil is poor for planting. The anchorage isn't sheltered from shifting wind. There are trees, yes, and birds, and beauty in the way the cliffs rise like the backs of sleeping whales. But it's not a place to settle, and so they'll go back. You blink, not in confusion, but in admiration, because turning around is not weakness here. It's wisdom. You're not failing, you're adapting. In Western exploration stories, the idea of going back is often framed as defeat, retreat, surrender, giving up. But for Polynesian voyagers, The sea was never something to conquer, it was something to understand. And sometimes, understanding means knowing when to stay and when to sail again. There's a word in some traditions for this kind of return hoy. It doesn't mean run away, it means circle back, revisit, resume from another angle. Voyaging is never linear, it's a spiral. You come back differently than you left. The elders begin discussing timing, not rushing, not stalling. They'll wait until the wind turns. 2 days, maybe 3. There's no pressure. They'll fish, repair a torn sail edge, collect more coconuts, perhaps trade with another nearby island. Even short stops are full of purpose. You help carry a bundle of gourds to the canoe and notice something: the lashings have already been checked, some retied. The hull has been scrubbed. This is not a pause. This is maintenance or readiness, because even when you stop, you're still voyaging. Historians often assume all ancient journeys aimed to find new islands, but many voyages were circular, not for conquest or fame, but for kinship. You visited cousins, you delivered gifts, you checked on a grandmother's resting place, and then you came home. You remember one chant now, murmured on your first night go, not to escape, but to return with new breath. That's what's happening here. One of the younger voyagers is learning to tie a different kind of knot, one used to secure heavier cargo for rougher waters. You watch him loop the fibers, fumble, re-loop, succeed. He smiles, not at you, but at his hands. His hands have learned something his head didn't know yet. You step away from the camp, just briefly, and walk to the far edge of the beach. The stars are out again, spangled across the sky in patient constellations. You find the Southern Cross, tilted slightly differently than the night before. The sky keeps shifting, and with it, your path. You think about the many reasons a canoe might turn back. A crew member falls ill. A reef pass proves too narrow. The wind changes unexpectedly. A star appears too late. Or, simply, the island speaks not here in 100 gentle signs. And none of that is failure. You remember a story told just this morning about a canoe that circled the same set of islands 4 times. The voyagers weren't lost. They were listening. Each time they landed, they learned a little more. And when they finally stayed, they knew how to care for the land before they asked it to care for them. That's the real goal, not just to arrive, but to belong. You return to the fire. It's lower now. People are settling in. A few are already wrapped in cloth, heads resting on bundles of bark cloth or coiled rope. No one announces bedtime. Sleep just arrives, like tide. You lie down, too, eyes open for a few moments longer. You look once more toward the canoe. It doesn't look disappointed. It looks ready. And you realize that what you've learned is more than how to sail. You've learned how to turn gently, how to hear no without fear, how to value a place without needing to keep it, how to know that not every journey must end in settlement. Some end in returning better. The morning feels different, not just cooler, but purposeful. The air carries a subtle edge, the kind that makes the sail whisper before it even catches wind. You're already awake, sitting on the canoe's edge, watching as preparations unfold, not with haste, but with certainty. You're going, not fleeing, not retreating, just sailing on. Today's course is slightly westward, back toward a known island, but along a new route, not retracing steps. Exactly. More like folding a map and seeing how the lines meet differently the second time through. As others move around you, you're reminded that this return, this circling, is not a footnote to the voyage. It's part of the story, a new verse, and one that might just leave behind something quietly permanent. In the sand, you pass a small pit lined with blackened stones, the remains of last night's cooking fire. Someone has carefully placed a shard of pottery inside it, not accidentally, not as trash, as a marker. These aren't mass-produced ceramics, either. They're lapita pots, fragments of a much older story. The Lapita people are believed to be the ancestors of the Polynesians. They migrated across Melanesia and into the wider Pacific over 3,000 years ago, leaving behind not cities, not monuments, but pottery, elegant, geometric, precise. Historians still argue whether Lapita migration was intentional expansion or gradual drift, but the trail they left through Vanuatu, Fiji, Tonga, and Samoa is a breadcrumb path of clay and ash and ancient coconut fibers, and each fragment, no matter how small, holds a whisper of an entire life. You kneel beside the fire pit and gently touch the shard. It's curved, painted once, maybe, worn smooth by years of sand and sun. It reminds you that not every mark left behind needs to be grand. Some can be the quiet kind, the kind that tells future travelers, "We were here, we passed gently, we remembered you, the canoe is nearly ready. The sail has been raised, not fully yet, but enough to test the angle. The lashings have been checked again. Food redistributed, the piglet fed. There's a calm confidence in everyone's movements. No ceremony needed. The voyage continues." You look at the others and realize this isn't just a crew. It's a moving archive. Every person here holds a piece of knowledge. How to patch sail matting, how to count birds, how to read the position of stars relative to horizon haze. No one knows everything, but together, they know enough. And that's how it always was. In oral cultures, knowledge isn't locked away in scrolls or screens. It's distributed, repeated, carried in bodies. There's no single expert, no one person holding the map. The voyage is held by many, and that's what makes it resilient. You help load the last few bundles, calabashes, tools, a mat carefully folded around something fragrant, maybe herbs. You tie the lashings with more confidence now. Your fingers move more naturally. You feel the pull of the cord, the balance of pressure. These things that once seemed foreign now rest easily in your hands. You glance at the fire pit again. The shard still sits there, undisturbed. It's not a relic. It's a hello. The tide begins to shift, rising just enough to loosen the canoe's grip on sand. That's your cue. Everyone moves, not rushed, not idle, just in sync. You push off. The hulls slide back into the water with a soft scrape, then a whisper. Back on the open sea, it welcomes you like an old companion. The swell is familiar, longer today, smoother. The breeze is steady, not strong, but promising. The sail fills, gently first, then fuller. The canoe responds like it's been waiting. You look back, just once. The island recedes, not forgotten, not dismissed, just stored, cataloged in memory and chance. Maybe you'll return one day, maybe not, but it's there now. It has a place in your mind, in the map you carry behind your eyes. Someone behind you begins to hum again, a wave song this time, its tempo matching the rhythm of the swells. You know it now. You hum along, and though the lyrics vary from island to island, the pulse remains constant. The canoe surges forward, cutting cleanly across the surface. Not fast, not slow, just exactly the pace you need. And beneath you, the water is deep and calm and whispering still. You sail now under a high noon sky, the kind that flattens shadows and sharpens the edges of clouds. The ocean is glassy, but not still. It breathes with you, lifting and lowering the canoe in a slow, predictable rhythm. The island you left this morning is gone from view. Ahead, nothing but blue, and yet you are not alone. Around you, the canoe is alive with quiet purpose. Someone adjusts the sail, tightening the lashing at the boom with a practiced twist of the wrist. Another hums a line of a chant, more rhythm than melody. Someone else checks the gourds, tapping them lightly to gauge how much water sloshes inside. It's all part of the pulse. You sit in the shade of the canopy, eyes following a thin trail of clouds that stretch from east to west. High clouds, mare's tails, some call them, in Polynesian navigation. They have a name too, and a function. They show wind directions high above, revealing patterns that might arrive at sea level in a day or two. You note their slant. A navigator's mind is always storing nearby. A voyager lays out a roll of bark cloth. On it, a series of painted designs, zigzags, spirals, a row of half circles. It isn't art for art's sake. It's memory. Some patterns represent winds, others mimic waves. Still others recall stories, where the stars were during a birth, which island held a funeral, how the moon looked the night a storm turned gentle. You ask to learn one, he smiles and traces a pattern with his finger, a long line that bends twice, then circles back. This one means the safe route between reefs, he says. Then he adds, but only when the tide is right. The lesson is clear. Knowledge is never static. It breathes, just like the sea. Historians still debate how long Polynesian navigators kept these traditions purely oral. Some argue that painted symbols and carvings were proto-writing systems. Others insist the real writing was muscle memory, song, and repetition, but they all agree it worked. You shift now toward the edge of the canoe and trail your fingers in the water. The current pulls gently, northwest, maybe a little more west than yesterday. You feel it in your wrist, your forearm, and just like that, you adjust your understanding of your position, not with numbers, with your skin. Someone passes a small shell over your shoulder. Inside, a paste of crushed pandanus root and coconut oil. You smear a bit across your forearm, not for fashion, for sun. This is your sunscreen, and if it smells like home, even better. The canoe rocks slightly as someone shifts their weight near the mast. You barely notice. Your body has adapted now. You no longer resist the motion, you use it. Your balance adjusts before your mind catches up. Midday becomes afternoon, the wind freshens slightly. You adjust the sail, not alone, someone else moves in tandem. That's the beauty of this vessel. It's not one person steering and the others obeying. It's an ensemble. Everyone knows when to move, and often no words are needed. You find a moment to lie back again, staring up at the sail. The matting is woven from pandanus strips, dyed in places from age and exposure. You trace the patterns with your eyes. Some say the weaving technique itself is mnemonic, a kind of tactile map where the fibers cross tighter. You know it was meant to resist wind, where they loosen, they flex. You think now of other places, where sailing means metal and engines and instruments, where mistakes are blamed on machines, where arrival is marked with paperwork. And this contrast is not about being more primitive or more advanced. It's about being immersed. The canoe does not separate you from nature. It is nature. Another chant begins. This one is a lullaby, not for a child. For the sea, the words call it gentle, call it grandmother, call it full of memory. The song is hundreds of years old, but it names the same currents you feel now, the same winds, the same stars. You look ahead. The horizon is still empty of land, but not of meaning. The clouds are thicker to the south, streaked with the faintest pink, even though sunset is far off. You note the pattern. It's called Ata Mali, soft clouds. It means stable air, predictable wind. You smile. You're not navigating by what's in front of you. You're navigating by what responds to you. Evening will come soon, the stars will rise again, and once more, you'll be under your sky map. But for now, you're just here, in motion, in tune, in trust, not rushing, not measuring, just knowing. Evening glides in without ceremony. One moment the sky is blue with gold-rimmed clouds, and the next, it's shading into soft lavender. You don't watch the sunset directly. You just notice the changes, longer shadows across the canoe, the way the wind softens at the edge of dusk, how the birds begin to turn back to wherever they came from. You're resting on your side now, propped against a bundle of mats. The canoe rocks gently beneath you, and your body, so unsure at the beginning of this journey, matches its rhythm without thought. You're not steady despite the movement. You're steady because of it. Someone begins to light a small bowl of coconut husk fibers, coaxing a slow-burning ember to life. Not for cooking, not for heat, just a glow, a point of light to match the ones soon to appear above, across from you. Another voyager is tying knots in a length of cord, something meditative in the action, a way to mark time without counting. The stars emerge slowly, like old friends wandering back into a quiet room. You watch for the ones you know now, Altair, Vega, Sirius. The Southern Cross leans at a new angle, lower tonight, and to the north, faint and flickering. The Pleiades cluster, Matariki, in some traditions, a sign of change, of seasons, of reflection. You're not racing toward a destination anymore. Maybe you never were. You've begun to realize that the point of the voyage was never just the land. It was the noticing, the repetition, the quiet kind of mastery that doesn't need to prove itself. A whisper passes along the canoe, someone pointing out a shift in the clouds. Not alarm, just awareness. The sails are adjusted without fuss. A few voices hum the low notes of a chant, not for direction, not even for guidance, just because. Historians often focus on the grandness of the Polynesian migration. Thousands of miles, hundreds of islands, feats of navigation that rival anything in the so-called Age of Discovery. But the truth is quieter than that. The truth is this people knew the sea intimately. They didn't chart it, they inhabited it. They knew how to leave, how to listen, how to turn around, how to share. You close your eyes and let the motion cradle you. Not a lullaby sung to you, but one sung with you. The canoe creaks, not in protest, but in contentment. Someone taps a rhythm on the deck, slow, syncopated, so the sound of a path remembered. You lie still, somewhere in your mind. You trace a star path again, this time not with your eyes, but with your breath. You don't need to recite it aloud. It's in your muscles now, in your hearing, in the soles of your feet. You know when you pass beneath Hokule. You feel the tug when you turn south with Canopus, and in the silence that follows. You don't seek confirmation. You don't need it. The sea has stopped asking for your attention. It knows it has it. The wind leans in. The stars stand still. The canoe glides. And you, who once watched with caution, now rest in rhythm, not as a guest, but as someone who belongs. The canoe drifts through the night now, as if on strings held gently by the stars. The sail rests, half furled, catching only what breeze is needed. Around you, voices have faded to breath. No one speaks, not from silence, but from completion. Everything that needed saying has already been said in salt, starlight, and softness. You lie back once more, the deck warm beneath your shoulder, the air cool against your skin. The ocean rocks you in that slow, ancient rhythm. It's kept for millennia. The swells pass beneath you like long, exhaled sighs, never too much, never too sudden, always there. The stars above shimmer gently, not sharp, but diffused, like they've softened just for you. Their names whisper themselves into the folds of your memory, some in languages you don't speak, others in rhythms your body already knows. You feel the weight of the journey behind you, not heavy, full. The canoe will keep moving long after you sleep. It will steer itself by the tilt of a sail, the hush of a current, the tug of a familiar wind, and you, folded into its gentle logic, will go on with it at rest, but never still, somewhere in the night. A bird calls once, distant, brief, and then nothing but the water and the stars. You let your eyes close, let the stories drift, let the waves carry them. You voyaged far, not through miles, but through knowing. You are at sea, in peace, and the world is finally, beautifully quiet.